Welcome everyone to ESC-TV Barcelona 2022. We have an exciting session now on big data. Really a hot topic nowadays, not only in cardiology but also in everyone's daily life. But today we're going to discuss what's the impact of big data on the cardiovascular diseases, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges. I think what we've learned in the past few years with the COVID pandemic is how important it is to get early access to data and how do we democratize the access to data. And I think this is a really important topic that we're going to discuss today with two excellent panelists. Professor Casadei from Oxford, we're going to say first names, I hope, during the discussions. And Professor Kotecha from Birmingham, both from the UK. Welcome and thanks for joining. Let's just kick off. I want to start with Barbara. It's just, what's in your view what is the biggest opportunity using big data in healthcare and maybe in cardiovascular disease specifically?
Thank you, Folkert. I mean, it is a revolution that has already started, and is going to change the way we practice and we conduct health research in the next 10 years, even more. I would say it's similar to what happened when the simple large clinical trial concept was introduced to assess efficacy and safety, or the introduction of GWAS to actually look at the connection between genetic variants and disease. So this will very much change everything. The thing that will be, I think, most impactful in the way we think is that it would open up even more the science to hypothesis-free science. Carrie Stephenson, the founder of Decode, says that a strong hypothesis is a scientist's biggest enemy because, hypotheses are predictable, and then investigators love the hypothesis, and that brings to bias.
But the counterpart is a lot of people saying from the traditional way of doing science that it's all miming, right, and data wrangling and everything. So how do we prevent? Maybe Dipak, maybe you can comment on that. Is how do we prevent people just that, right? It's just do post hoc analysis and just how it goes and do the data wrangling. How do we circumvent?
No, I mean, I couldn't agree with Barbara more. I think we're on the cusp of something different here. I agree with you. In the past, it has been data mining, and you just kind of, fish around for something that you're interested in. But I think with good quality, with robust guidance, we're entering a phase where we can do things like we used to do with the randomized trials. We can have a very descriptive process. We can have it transparent.
Yeah.
We can have it very open,
exactly.
And by having it open, other people can contribute, but also they can contradict us, they can challenge us, they can make the research better, and then the next time it's used, it's that much better. And again, it's taking advantage of all that iterative work, and I think that's why it's different now than it was 10, 15 years ago with, as you said, with more of a data mining aspect. Now we're really talking about healthcare-based, routine healthcare-based studies, using the vast amount of information that's collected, but for reasons to improve future healthcare for all of our patients.
Yes.
And so, Barbara, you mentioned clinical trials, which is still the gold standard, right, in medicine, particularly in cardiovascular disease. So how do we manage expectations that with real-world data, or how can they enable clinical trials?
I think we already have very great examples, even at this meeting, on how you can conduct clinical trials within a data infrastructure, being that a national health service or a registry or any form of routine data collection where you can embed randomization. In fact, I think we should embed randomization in almost everything we do when we don't know why exactly we're doing it. I am dreaming of a future without consensus recommendation in the guidelines.
Well, I was about to say that's most of the stuff we practice, right?
Exactly.
We don't know whether a drug A or B is better. We just give them because we're used to them.
In so many other things that we do. So, and a data infrastructure allows you I think it's a lifting really our game, by implementing randomization.
But the challenge is still, is what you're saying, is for regarding guidelines. How do we compute the guidelines? So how do we make the definitions of the guidelines within our electronic health records and routine care data to make sure that we don't compare apples to oranges? I mean, Dipak, maybe you can comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the key problem we have now is not in the way it's being done, but in the implementation.
Exactly.
In order to then benefit the average patient out there. And as you said, guideline task forces, but also we've got to think about regulators. You know, there's a real impetus from the regulators in particular to use some of this real-world data. We have to respond to that, and we have to up our game, and we have to put forward proposals where we can document the quality of the data, what we've done to look at the quality, how we've verified it, how we've repeated it and evaluated it and validated it. And I think those strands are really part of how we then make this important transformation part of routine, everyday healthcare research.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all work in an international setting. So how do we scale this, right? So in the UK you have kind of infrastructure, which is pretty much with all the registries. But how do we scale across Europe? Because we are a European society. So, Barbara, what's your?
Yes, I mean this is an absolute priority.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that a physician that is able to handle a spreadsheet is not really equipped to handle big data. So we need to really implement adequate training, even from medical schools, I would say. Otherwise, we write the medical profession off the major development that there will be in the next 10 years or so. And also, you know, what we can also do, the society could contribute to that through collaborations with university, but big data also opens up collaborations with both commercial and part of academic institution and fields that we have not tapped as yet. And you know, most of the big data companies are now becoming interested in health, and we need to be ready to make, I think, that contribution.
I mean, I would add one bit there, which is the public and the patients.
Yes.
Because I think we forget that the only reason that this is available now is because the public are happy for it to happen. But that's not always the case. You know, we've had our own issues in the UK, as others have had.
Indeed.
But we need to bring the public with us, and that I think is part of this multi-stakeholder approach. It has to include, as you said, interested parties. It has to include a range of stakeholders. But at its heart, we need to ensure that we're treating the public as an equal entity here, because it's their data. It's you know, they own that. They are, if you like, gifting it to us to do some research, which hopefully will be in the benefit of their colleagues, their patriots around, but not necessarily them. And I think that's the difference with what big data research is. We're not often giving the value to that individual. We're giving it to the community.
Yeah. No.
And also there's the challenge, I think, is how do we engage ourselves as a community, right? Because I think for the universities that are doing research, they see the effort, but in the daily life, right, there's a lot of admin burden without any credit directly. So yesterday was a hotline session on big data and digital health. Just like in a registry, which is already like another step, is 46% was missing data, right? It just, so how do we, because it's all about phenotype, it's all about the quality of data, it's not about the algorithms, it's really about the phenotype. So how should we engage?
I think we need to educate the medical community that this matters. You know, and therefore the collection of data, the handling of data, the analysis of data will follow. People don't like to put in extra effort to input data or to do it properly if they don't think it, you know, if they don't think it really matters.
Yeah, but that's a bit of the big picture. While meanwhile, if you're doing your outpatient clinic, you have 8 minutes per patient. You don't want to do the admin burden. That's so how can we?
There must be ways that we can design the electronic health record in a way that is more intuitive, that is easier to mine. You know, so far these electronic health records have been parachuted onto us with, not always, at least in the UK, they're all different in different institutions. How can you expect then they will make the job of actually looking at this much more difficult? So I think we need to, get a bit of a control over this and co-design, co-production with doctors, not just with patients.
But you're right, we're kindly fragmented also due to the commercial initiatives and the different providers, which makes it difficult.
Yeah.
But I think as a community we have to step up.
Exactly.
Right? And show, okay, this is the minimal data set and we have to make sure that it's from the source itself without that we have to reverse engineer it on the work.
Yes.
Sorry, Dipak.
No, I think you're right, and I think the recent endeavors by BigData Heart and the ESC are a good example here. So, we've worked together with regulators, FDA, EMA, with major journals, with payers, with people around the whole stakeholder group really, and of course with the patient voice, the ESC Patient Council, European Heart Network, industry, and we've really tried to bring that together under the banner of Big Data at Heart and the ESC. And I think that gives you the inkling of what is possible in the next few years. Now, this is something called CodeEHR, and we'll be presenting this live later on in the Congress this evening. And you'll be able to download that from the three journals, British Medical Journal, BMJ, Lancet Digital Health, and European Heart Journal later this evening. But it just gives you a view actually of how when you bring these people together, that there is a way forward, and that could lead to better research design, as you said, implementing this right up front, so it's part of our normal everyday work.
Yes.
Or not work really, that it happens, it facilitates it without doing extra work, and that I think is a way forward to getting good transparent research from health records that are routinely collected.
No, great initiative. So for people, it will be, the embargo will be lifted today at 5, and please comment through Twitter and other socials, because I think this document, which is really with a broad stakeholder group, it's really a starting point of discussion that we need to have. I just want to open discussion as well for people from the floor, if people are interested. There's a microphone in the middle.
Thank you very much. It's a very important subject, and I think that touches everybody, let alone medical profession, because we all, I think, booked or came here. I myself, by the time I'm booking something, I find what to do in Barcelona, because Google and the rest of it know where we're going and hint to us what to do. Now, the major problem for us as a health professional is the ethics of that. How much that can be mishandled. And we know what the GDPR recently have issued us to have authorization, because that can be taken, and then you can have problem with that. And again, even people whistleblower, we know what happened with Julian Assange, and people who are brave enough to stop people mishandling things, even on the politics. So on the health side, if people take our stuff and sell us unhealthy product, how it can be used, let alone if you use it for a crime or something else. How we can gauge that from an ethical point of view?
Want to comment?
Yeah, well, actually that's something that we talked a lot about in the big stakeholder groups, and you'll see throughout this paper actually comment about that. Actually what people want, they're happy to give their data as long as they know what the purpose is for, and that it's being used for something reliable, that it's not going to be sold off, and so on. So a lot of that came across when we were developing this stakeholder group, and part of this comment is really about making sure we're transparent about what happens to the data, how it's collected, that people have been involved from the public in, for example, the consent issues or lack of consent. In some of these circumstances, of course, these are often data opt-outs, but that has had a conversation, and that can be reflected and it can be transparently produced so that people can see that. That for me is the key area, and I think if we move forward in that way, that will help all of us to achieve research that doesn't have the problems that you just talked about.
Yeah, we're going to discuss this more in the afternoon as well, because I think it's the trustworthiness of AI or the algorithms is really key, the traceability, so where is the decision based upon, before we can fully adapt. And I think as a society as large, right, we as healthcare professionals, but also the citizens, we have to be, right, there has to be some kind of mandatory framework, right, for companies before they actually implement those algorithms within their systems. So I think it's really important that we have a framework as a society as large, and hopefully this document will be the start of that discussion. If there are no other urgent questions, I would like to wrap up. And please join us this afternoon at 5 for further discussion. And please take a look at the papers. We will be online this evening. I want to thank Barbara and Dipak for joining, and I thank you all for being part of this.